We are now going to spend some time hearing from people who have made these switches themselves in their own homes. We have multiple consumers on this call from different states: Massachusetts, New Jersey, California, Texas. I see a lot of good questions in the Q&A, but let me kick it off with a question for Susan, or actually a question for Heather Sheldon first, which is, why did you decide to get a heat pump and what factored into your decision to do that?
Yeah, hi. So I'm in Western Massachusetts, where we get quite cold winters here. We have both electric heat pump hot water heater, and we heat our house entirely with heat pumps. We wanted to go all electric for many reasons, but I really love the controllability of a mini split system. So in our house, we have 7 different heads. So we have four bedrooms, and each bedroom has its own head. So we can only heat rooms that we're in at any given time. And I have a ton of control over, I can, if nobody's going to be in that room, I just turn the heat way down. And, I'm at night, I can turn the kitchen way down, I can turn the living room way down, and we're not overheating our house. And then it's just way more efficient in general.
That's great. And then Luke, I understand you have a heat pump water heater, different appliance, somewhat different climate. Can you tell us about what led you to make that decision?
Yeah, my gas water heater broke and I needed a new one. I remember some 8 years ago, my gas water heater broke and I needed to replace it. I called, a water heater company and, begged them to give me an efficient option. And they just were like, no, you don't want to do that. And just completely, dissuaded me from, choosing a more efficient option. So we needed hot water, right? And so it was kind of forced into this decision. And so this time, this past summer, I was like, I'm not going to let this happen, even if we have to wait a few days or longer to have hot water. And had to make several calls, before I found somebody that was, excited to sell me a heat pump water heater. And, and we wanted to do that, for the same reason, of wanting to, fully electrify our home. My thought had been we would switch the gas stove first, but it's the water heater broke, so we had to prioritize that, and we've been really happy with it. And I saw, looking at my gas bill, the gas use in our house just plummeted, I think from like 1,600 cubic feet to 400 cubic feet in just a span of a month. So that's pretty exciting. That shows me that I still have some gas to get rid of, with the stove. So that's next. But we've been really happy with it so far. I think I'd heard some concerns about, like, will it provide enough hot water for you when you need it? And we've had no problem, always had plenty of hot water, and the benefit of a cooler garage during a hot Texas summer has been also nice.
That's great. And I know I kind of shared your thought of like, oh gosh, it's just the water heater. You're going to see that much of a drop in the gas usage. So that's great to hear. I am curious from some of the other folks on the call who have switched to either heat pumps or heat pump water heaters, Susan, Heather, Emily. Have you also seen other benefits since making those switch, including, do you see changes in your utility bills? Are there other things you've noticed?
So one of the real benefits, going back to the cooling temperatures, the heat pump hot water heater that we have both heat pump for space heating, and then also for the hot water. And it's amazing the amount of dehumidification that also occurs with that heat pump hot water heater. So in New Jersey, a lot of times basements can be a little damp. And one of the great things about having the heat pump hot water heater in the basement is that it is completely dry down there. It's fantastic.
Interesting. Emily, I'm curious for you how you went about figuring out the kind of size and type of system that you wanted, and then finding a contractor to get it installed.
So I live in Berkeley, California, in the Bay Area. We have very mild summers and very mild winters. We didn't have air at all. And we had a gas heater in our home that we didn't turn on all of that often. The reason we were personally motivated to go electric, beyond like the self-interested reason was because of the increasing wildfire and smoke seasons that we're experiencing in Northern California. So in particular, I'm trying to remember, it was maybe I think 2 years ago when we had a period of time where it was during COVID, we had a heat wave and we had really unhealthy air outdoors, and our family was stuck indoors sweating, and not even literally being able to leave our home. And we decided we needed the security of getting some air. And so that's what led us to then start to look into this more and more. We ended up finding a contractor who was interested in home electrification through networking and referrals through friends. I wish I had a better tip for how to find those contractors. I do think it's important to find a contractor who's kind of aligned with your vision, because there are definitely some additional hoops to go through. And then we just worked with him to figure out the size that we need. We actually have solar, and and we ended up doing a battery too, because there's also grid, California is experiencing some grid unreliability, but we don't have an electric car yet. So we've just focused on our home to date. Unlike Joel's recommendation, sorry, Joel.
I might amend Joel's recommendation too. Good to start with that, but wherever you are ready to get started is a great place to start exploring some of these technologies. Thanks, Emily. I'm curious too, for all the folks that have switched to heat pumps, does it actually keep your house warm in the winter and cool in the summer? Has performance been what you hoped it would be?
I will say performance has been amazing. And I really echo Emily's point on the fact that it does take a little bit to find a contractor. So we made the switch in the process of completely renovating a 1908 rear hall colonial, which I don't recommend doing through the middle of COVID. But we had to speak with at least 3 HVAC companies to find someone who was willing to actually electrify the home. And then we had to actually hire somebody outside of actually the third one who was willing to do it, to do all of the manual J and manual S calculations to make sure that both the HVAC contractor and our general contractor were actually comfortable that the unit would perform. And it has really met or exceeded everybody's expectations. And so I hope that through the process that we went through, now both the HVAC contractor and our general contractor will be more willing to listen to other customers who may say this is what they want, but perhaps not be as strident in demanding electrification of space heating and water heating. So it does take a little bit of work, but the performance has really been phenomenal.
I wanted to add, in Western Massachusetts, where we are, we have not run into problems finding contractors. We have a lot of really experienced people with these systems, and I was able to get 3 quotes, all from very knowledgeable people in a very short amount of time. And I was even able to pick the one that I felt, was able to meet my vision for some of the aesthetics. We were able to run the line sets and stuff. I don't know how it connects from the indoor unit to the outdoor unit. Sometimes people want to put that on the outside of the house. The one guy I selected was really willing to work with me to bury those inside closets and get the condensate out of the building in a way that, made them seamless into our existing late 60s house. As far as performance goes in Western Massachusetts, we're definitely very heat dominated. When I look at our energy usage, our January electric bill is the same as the other 10 months combined. The 2 months of January, February use as much electricity as the whole rest of the year. So it's pretty amazing how the winter dominates our energy usage here. That said, we only, when I worked with the MEP people, I deliberately had them undersize it ever so slightly. If we, when you get into extreme cold, the heat pumps work less efficiently. Not that they still don't work more efficiently than almost anything else, but compared to themselves, you get down to -10 and they're not performing as well. So we did leave in, the house was an electric heated, resistance heated home before. So we left a few of those units in. So I could turn those and know, because I could feel it, that the heat pumps weren't keeping up, leave those on when we have an overnight low of -20, -10. But we've had great luck finding folks here. So depending where you are, you might not be a process. So don't be too discouraged.
Roger that. Great. And then we have a question from Phil for Luke Metzger. Is the heat pump water heater noisier than your old gas unit?
I can't hear it. It's in our garage, which is literally just right behind this wall. And I had heard, some concerns of like, oh, it's really noisy. You want to make sure it's far away, but I can't hear it at all. And, if you open the door, it's like a gentle humming, in the garage, but, I find it pleasant actually.
Great. Probably better than the gentle humming of mosquitoes we have here in DC much of the year.
Certainly.
Great. And then we have questions from a number of people in the audience about geothermal heat pumps. I'm wondering, maybe Joel, if you have anything that you can share about those versus the more common air source heat pumps.
Sure.
Resources to people.
Yeah, sure. Geothermal or ground source heat pumps. We like them, but Rewiring America, we've sort of focused more on air source heat pumps because A, they've gotten a lot better in recent years, and B, they're a lot cheaper to install because you don't have to do all of the groundwork. And we're trying to move the market. And so if you have a ground source heat pump or you have a lot of land and are interested on some cash and are interested in a ground source heat pump, get some quotes. And they are eligible for rebates and discounts. We just focus more on air source because it's going to be the correct solution, or the easier and cheaper solution for a lot of people.
Great. Then I'd love to ask some questions on gas stoves too, and switching to electric and induction stoves. For people on the call that have made the switch, do you have a brand that you like? How did you wind up choosing your particular stove?
We have the GE Cafe, and we chose to actually go with it. There's a double oven, which has just been a nice, honestly, it doesn't have to do with it. It's just been really nice to actually be able to, so people know, I think already, induction stove that's cooktop heats water so fast. That's just such a nice benefit. I have a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old, and I love that I feel very safe at this point, letting my kids cook on the stove as long as I'm, they obviously still have hot food and hot pans, but the fact that there's not a gas flame has made me a lot more comfortable letting my kids cook. And then we like having the double oven as well for us. We often are just trying to heat up or cook one thing, and it's just a smaller space that also heats up more efficiently, or to have honestly 2 different, if we need to heat up things at 2 different temperatures, that gives us the option too. So our experience has been great so far.
Great. And Susan, I know you have a induction stove as well. Can you talk a little bit about how you chose your stove and what benefits you've seen?
Well, yeah, the biggest driver was I got a notification on my phone that during the summer, when I'm not using much gas, that my gas bill was higher than normal. And being kind of nerdy, I looked at the back end of my bill and, ooh, what a nice surprise. I had a $100 per month surcharge on my gas bill for weatherization. In other words, we've amortized our winter storm and everyone gets to pay that. And since I had ice in my sink and didn't have the benefit of that gas during the winter storm, let's just kindly say that I was irritated. So I started looking at all the gas stuff I had in my house. I do already have a double induction stove, but I had a gas cooktop, and I have an older home, not 1905, but 1940. And so it wasn't as easy as I thought, mainly because the physical hole on my countertop for the gas stove was much smaller than what you need for electric. So we had to do some carpentry. And then the wiring on my 1945 home wasn't quite adequate either. So we had to do a little bit of electrical work. I ended up with the KitchenAid just because my other appliances are all KitchenAid and I've had really good luck with it. My other little surprise, and it's an okay surprise, was that I had this really lovely Cephalon cookware set that's all aluminum. My kids were thrilled with my pan donation to their relative kitchens because I had to completely rework my my pans. But I've found new pans. I absolutely love having almost instantaneously warm water for pasta and it's really actually good for stir fry as well. It cooks pretty quickly and pretty hot. And so overall, it's been a very positive experience. With my wiring and my carpentry though, my installation cost almost as much as the equipment itself. And then there was the pan thing. So I've got a good Christmas list going. But I think it was the right thing to do. Next on my list is my water heater and my furnace, which is, we'll get there. One thing at a time.
One thing at a time, indeed. I'm curious for other people that have gotten induction stoves, maybe Matt or others. Did you have any surprises in making the switch? You know, did you have to do anything with your pans or electrical or surprise benefits as well?
It was very easy for me. The biggest surprise was how fast it boils water. It's a good surprise.
And what types of pans do you typically use with your induction stove?
Well, I have an electric, a flat top, and so I didn't have to switch out any pans. But I do know that if you're thinking about an induction, if you've got a magnet on your fridge, you can test out.
Take it with you to pans.
Yeah, right. Test it. If the magnet sticks to your pans, then you can use it. And most pans will work, but in our induction guide, we have a discussion on what kind of pans and how to know.
Good tip. I want to ask a question from Jillian, who appreciates hearing from you all, as do I, and is wondering for anybody on the call here, what reservations did you have about making the switch for any of these appliances, and how did you overcome those? And I'd like to respond to that.
I will say I had absolutely none. I am leading the City of Dallas climate plan. To me, it was a matter of walking the talk. Like Emily, I have solar. I'm actually getting a battery installed today because during that same winter storm, I learned that solar without that battery doesn't do much. Because like Emily, I needed to be able to be grid sufficient myself. So it's a matter of walking the talk relative to what I'm trying to help our community to do.
For us, it was really important to electrify everything. And a lot of it is because, for example, your gas appliance is going to become less and less efficient over time with use. And so it's actually going to become more and more polluting, versus your electric appliance is going to become better and better for the environment as we continue to green up our grid. And so anytime that we were thinking about what we needed to do to really be part of the solution, that was part of it. The only hesitation of any of the appliances that we have, because we've completely electrified the house, so we do all of our space heating, cooking, hot water, and drying actually through electricity. So we also have a heat pump dryer, and that was the only one that I wasn't as sure about. We have a Miele. I love it. It's great. And really the way that I got across or through any sort of reservation was just thinking about really how much better that would be. And the great thing is that it plugs into a standard plug. So I know that there was a question in the chat or on the Q&A about plugs as well. You can get, especially clothes dryers, I know that have just a standard plug into a standard outlet. And now Rheem does make a heat pump hot water heater that also is just a standard electrical outlet. So not all of these appliances that we're talking about actually do require a lot of electrical work. You just have to be cognizant of the one that you choose.
Thanks, Heather. I want to do one last kind of round the horn with our great panelists here of any advice that you have for people looking to make the switch to an electric stove or heat pump or heat pump water heater. And can we start with Luke?
Yeah, I think you just making sure that you don't take no for an answer, and keep making calls if the first person doesn't know what you're talking about or thinks you're crazy. We don't think you're crazy. Lots of this is legit. This is proven technology. It's good for the planet. It'll save you money in the long run. So keep at it.
Great. We're not crazy. Susan, how about you?
So what I have taken is a stepwise approach. I invested in solar, took the savings from solar to invest in EV, took the savings from EV to get the charger, used the savings from the charger to, I had thought, get a heat pump, but I still don't have a proposal on it. But then I did the cooktop instead. So I'm using the rebates and trying to kind of pay myself forward, if you will, with the energy savings over time. I did actually, the very first thing I did was install a radiant barrier in my attic. So we went for energy savings first, and then started using the savings to kind of escalate my electrification process.
I love that. We can call it the Susan plan. That's great. Heather, how about you?
Take it, that's me, Heather. I'd like to build on what Susan was just saying when it came to our solar panels on our roof. Actually, I know it's a little off topic for this, but when I was saying before that we had great HVAC folks here that were all on board with heat pumps for heating, I found that when I went to go do our solar panels, the people I were talking with were rather skeptical about our site because we were fairly wooded. It didn't have great orientation. And they're like, oh, you're only going to get a 15-year payback. And I'm like, only? That's great.
That's great. Heather, we're losing you a little bit, but we heard 15-year payback.
Yeah.
That's great. Excellent.
Because the guy down the street was getting it. It still made a ton of sense for me.
Uh-huh.
Oh, and
Great. Okay. Heather Sheldon, we're losing you a little bit, but thank you for sharing, and let's go to Heather Payne.
I would really just echo what Luke said. It's in many places, it still is a process. There still are kinks in permitting and everything else that you may need to work through, but it is definitely worth it given how long these appliances last. And so every single time one of these appliances gets installed that's natural gas, that just extends the requirements for not only that house and that particular person, but for us to maintain that entire natural gas system. And that's going to have negative implications for equity and the planet that we can't even go on in this call. So it really is a ripple effect, and we can be part of that positive movement by being, as Luke said, not crazy and not taking no for an answer.
Thanks. Matt Cassell, final words of advice from you.
Just as other people have said, it's a process. There are a lot of things, and these are big purchases. They're not everyday purchases, right? So understanding that it's a process, we we have a plan for our house and we're working through it, and it's not going to happen overnight. But once you start making that plan and you start realizing some of the cost savings as you do it, things start to fall into place. And then if you're a renter, obviously this is a whole other issue and makes things more difficult. If you have a gas stove, you can't get your landlord to install proper ventilation or switch out the gas stove. Portable induction cooktops are not that expensive. They work great. You can plug them into the wall. You can reduce your gas use. And then of course, then it's important to push for that policy change, right? And those broader societal changes that make it so that, we're not trapped in a situation where we're stuck with gas.
Amen. And Emily, any parting words of advice?
Well, I just saw a comment from Anthony in the chat that I wanted to echo, which is, of all this, actually figuring out how to make your home like ceiling and insulation is a really good first step. Before we did any of this, we actually insulated our floors underneath, which were not insulated at all before. And I was amazed at how much of a difference that made in our home. And again, I live in a mild climate, so I don't experience the really harsh winters, but that I don't want to ignore that piece of the equation too.